Okay. Welcome, everyone. I wanted to do this webinar on reshoring because over the past few years, that term reshoring has gone from an occasional discussion to an imminent priority with tariffs and supply chain disruptions, labor shortages, geopolitical uncertainty. It's changed how we think about sourcing. So this session isn't going to tell you whether reshoring is right or wrong. It's more about giving you a practical framework to determine what makes the most sense for your business. So our presenters today, it's the Manufacturing Resource Group, or that's another group I formed. It's the manufacturers um, webinar series, and it is comprised of the three of us. So we've got Rich Bello. He's a Schooley Mitchell cost reduction analyst, and Matt Wiseman, who does business leadership coaching. And I am a growth strategist and a fractional CMO. So you may ask, what is a fractional CMO doing talking about reshoring? Because to be a growth strategist, I really need to look at the landscape that is impacting manufacturers and consider all aspects in a growth strategy. So I have to stay informed on what impacts the industry. So why is reshoring back? 5 years ago, when COVID happened, most companies were focused on cost. And so we were going overseas because it was cheaper. Then COVID showed us how fragile this global supply chain can be. Suddenly, it wasn't the cheapest supplier, that was always the best supplier if things couldn't arrive in time or at all. So back then, we all know we experienced transportation delays and cost spikes and shortages. And then add everything that's happened since, all the geopolitical conflicts in the world, changing trade policies. We started to wonder if maybe production should come closer to home. And also, under President Trump's policies, he is mandating reshoring. So, what we're going to talk about today is that current policy landscape. Um, so, I don't care what political party someone is part of. We want to approach this objectively because policies affect different companies differently. It's not a one size fits all landscape. So some manufacturers benefit from domestic incentives. Others experience higher costs due to tariffs on imported materials. So rather than viewing policy as good or bad, we just need to understand how it affects the cost structure, the competitiveness, and customer demand. So I want to look at the potential benefits. How could it benefit someone to reshore? Shorter supply chains improve a lot of things. Communication, reduction in delays, improve quality because you can collaborate more easily. But a lot of manufacturers also discover carrying less inventory offsets some of the higher labor costs associated with domestic production. So you don't need to warehouse as much product because it's close to home. And then also I have to approach marketing in this some way. Also, there's a marketing advantage. So made in America still contains significant value. And if you're sourcing from the United States, you can claim that with your product. So what are the challenges on the flip side? This is where the reality sets in. Reshoring isn't just moving machines from China to the US. The biggest problem we've got right now is skilled workforce. Can we support domestic production? Do we have sufficient capacity? And it's a huge investment, not only in equipment, but in people, facilities, and infrastructure. So imagine if we take, I didn't even look up the number, take 100,000 jobs from overseas, reshore them to the US. Do we have 100,000 people to fill those roles? And that is really the greatest challenge at the moment. So to stay on top of expenses, we need to look at not doing things the way we've always done it, the same old, same old. It's also important to have conversations with multiple providers to ensure an optimized supply chain. And all of the manufacturers I work with are pretty good at this. I have a couple machine shops that I work with right now, and they don't have just one supplier. They have multiple supply streams so that if one goes under or doesn't have product, they can turn to another. And that's smart business decision. Don't put all your eggs in one basket because the basket goes away, you have no eggs. So, how have things changed? For years, I'm a lean practitioner. I'm a black belt candidate and I have my green and yellow belts and I've done 7 projects. So lean manufacturing always emphasized reducing inventory and eliminating waste. Then COVID reminded us that resilience matters too. It's not just reduce inventory and eliminate waste because we did that during COVID and we still were struggling. So many manufacturers are trying to balance lean principles with strategic redundancy now. So instead of asking, what's the cheapest supplier? A lot of companies are asking, what's our backup plan if the supplier disappears tomorrow? And that's an important plan to have. So in the past, price has always been indicative of choices. We want to get the best price. We want to get the lowest cost. But and with reshoring and offshoring, that's the biggest decision maker, comparing hourly labor rates. What do we pay for a product that's made in China or the Philippines? We can hire a virtual assistant for $800 a month for 40 hours a week, but we couldn't hire an American virtual assistant for that price. But you have to not look at the hourly labor rate. You have to look at all the other factors. So if overseas production creates 6 weeks of delays due to shipping, quality problems, excess inventory that you're warehousing, expedited freight costs, and customer dissatisfaction due to lead times, then the cheapest labor may actually be the most expensive option because it can cost you customers. So smart manufacturers are doing what's called evaluating total cost of ownership, not just simply purchase price. So everybody has asked me, should every company reshore? Should we all be reshoring? And like I said at the beginning of this presentation, there's not a universal answer. Some should. Others may benefit from nearshoring from Mexico or Canada. CUSMA is still in effect, so it eliminates a lot of tariffs on items manufactured in Mexico and Canada. Others may continue sourcing globally, but choose to diversify suppliers. You could have domestic suppliers and overseas suppliers and have a good marketing mix, supply chain mix. So the decision really depends on your products, your customers, your labor requirements, your risk tolerance, and your long-term strategy. And every company is different in those areas. So how do you prepare for the future, whether you reshore or not? These actions can prepare you. Most manufacturers don't understand where their greatest risk is until something goes wrong. So we didn't know what our risks were, and then COVID happened. We didn't know what our risks were, and then the storms in Texas took out the petrochemical plants, and we're set into a spin, and then we find out what our greatest risk is. So preparing today is a lot less expensive than reacting during the next disruption because there will be another disruption. Uncertainty needs to be baked into everything we do because disruptions happen all the time. The backup in the canal, shortage of shipping containers, shortage of drivers. So things keep surfacing and we keep being surprised by those when we should be planning for those. So these questions might help you with that strategic planning. The goal is not to predict the future. It's to be prepared for multiple scenarios. Um, think of, right now, I don't know if you're familiar with, but digital twinning is something that's become really popular and it's starting to be implemented in manufacturing. And it is about that preparedness. Let's look at digital um, scenarios and run it through all these different scenarios and look at the outcomes and what we can do to prepare for these different scenarios. So we just want to be prepared, not predict the future. These questions can help you make better decisions than forcing you to react later. Now, reshoring, we all know all suppliers are not created equally, right? So it only works if you can find the right partner. So how someone asked me actually if I was going to cover this, and I didn't intend to, but because of his question on LinkedIn, I included this in the presentation. He said, "Are you going to cover how we actually find qualified domestic suppliers?" So that's a challenge a lot of companies underestimate. The assumption is that if production comes back to the US, suppliers are going to be easy to find. And in actuality, the opposite is true. Many of the best machine shops, fabricators, molders, contract manufacturers built their business through decades of referrals. So they have long-term customer relationships and they're focused on serving those existing customers, sometimes not on marketing themselves. I know that all too well. Some manufacturers don't hire me because they're relying on their handful of customers that are legacy customers and they're not working to earn new business. So as a result, they may have little presence online and not appear in a search engine, and you're never going to find them. So, finding the right supplier requires more than Google or ChatGPT. It means leveraging industry associations, manufacturing extension partnerships, trade shows, referrals, OEM networks, and supply chain partners. And conducting a thorough qualification process that looks beyond price. One of my clients, they're a high precision machine shop and they are not cheap. They do not sell their services based on price, but they're the best. Their communication is impeccable. Their turnaround time is perfect. Their defects are non-existent. And they really are at a premium because of the quality of service that they provide. So you need to look at their technical expertise, their systems, what like this machine shop I'm talking about, they're fully automated. They have the best machines. They have 5 or 6 CMMs, and they're also using robotics. So they've got, lights out 24/7 production. Um, you look at the financial health of your supplier. What is their responsiveness? And those are all factors that go beyond price that count for a lot. Now, I've spent a lot of time in manufacturing, way too many years, and I've worked with probably more than 25 or 30 manufacturers. So if you hope to benefit from reshoring, don't assume people are going to find you. Many capable shops remain invisible because they haven't invested in marketing, website, search visibility, business development. So reshoring creates an opportunity, but only for manufacturers that are able to be found. So keep that in mind as well. And I hope that answers the question of the gentleman who asked that of me. So that's really the end of my presentation. I just want to go over a last couple cleanup bookkeeping things. First of all, I created a post-event toolkit for anybody who signed up for the presentation. I have an action planning worksheet I created and a reshoring decision checklist, and I'd be happy to send that to you as long as I have your email address. And then I want to talk about our next dates. So in August, Matt will be covering the 7 C's of leadership. September, Rich is doing identifying opportunities for savings on uniforms and linens. And I'll be back again on deck in October to talk about growing your existing customers before chasing new ones. Again, the three of us are your presenters. These QR codes, you can scan them to go to any of our respective websites if you'd like to speak with any of us at a later date. And now I want to open it up to a Q&A. A couple people weren't able to make it due to illness today, but they wanted to watch the recorded version. But Matt and Rich always have valuable contributions to make. So I want to open it up to them to add their expertise to the presentation.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So one comment first. Gina, I mean, you touched on a lot of interesting stuff around on this topic, and I think you did touch on this, maybe just not as explicitly as I'll say it, is factoring in what is core competency for your business, right, in this decision to reshore versus not, and how does that affect the ultimate customer experience. Um, but with regard to a question, and this is related to reshoring, but it's also related to just selecting suppliers and building redundancy into your supply chain in general. Um, and do you have any advice for businesses out there that, they've got that single point of failure in their supply chain? They know they need to um, address it, find a secondary, but their business is not big enough to make it appealing, right? I've run into this a number of times working in smaller companies where it's like, yeah, we know this one supplier is really critical. If anything ever happened, if they, if a batch of material got damaged or whatever, and they had to remake it, that would really upset our business. We need to have a backup source, but we can't, our order volume is not big enough to split it in half and have it be appealing to, you know, more than just one supplier. Do you know what I'm kind of getting at? Like, do you have any recommendations in that regard?
Yeah, I mean that is a tough thing if you're doing lower volume. Most of the shops I work with are high volume. But what I would say is there are small batch manufacturers. They're out there. You just got to look for them and find them. Like for instance, there is a machine shop near me who specializes in low volume. He just does a lot of low volume. So they're out there. Um, Also, you can do kind of like negotiate staggered production runs. So one of my clients does that um, with some of his suppliers. He'll give this project to that supplier, this project to that supplier, and kind of stagger them
Yeah.
so that he's giving them both business and keeping them both in his back pocket. So that's probably what I would suggest.
Okay.
Good question.
Gina, I thought it was a good point when you were talking about the cost procurement strategies, and that's a big aspect of our business. Schoolie Mitchell with cost reduction is always making sure that you're understanding um, the full breadth of what you're purchasing, the volumes, the prices, your contracts that are in place, all that type of stuff. But I think it's especially relevant in the conversation about onshoring. If you're obviously, if you're going to switch to an onshoring model, you're going to need to make a change in your supplier. It's going to have to be someone onshore rather than overseas. So part of our process with Schoolie Mitchell is often trying to keep clients with the same vendors, but just negotiating better rates. But the opposite of that is also true sometimes when you do need to make a switch if the current vendor isn't cooperating or not willing to budge on their price. We do have to make changes sometimes, and I think a big part of that is having the network and the relationships built with other providers. Now, in this instance, when we're talking about onshoring, there may not have been a need for that in the past. So it's something that needs to be built, and it's something that can be built before making the final decision to switch. And I think another thing that you mentioned in terms of conversations and utilizing associations or other groups that are like-minded or similar businesses, just opening up those lines of communications with people that are currently onshoring, and getting their perspective and getting feedback and hearing who they're working with and some of the pros and cons can go a long way in that whole discussion and making that decision.
I mean, also, Rich, you bring up a good point. The conversations and joining other people who can help you. So it brought to mind a couple manufacturers I worked with. Their leadership, their president CEO was part of a Vistage group. And Vistage is for leadership to network. And they shared resources. They actually shared me. I worked for one of them. He referred me to the other manufacturer because I did such a great job for him, and they became my client. So they do recommend people that they use that they're happy with. Also, I wanted to mention, I talked about total cost of ownership, and that's so important to understand because cost or price is not the same as total cost of ownership. You have to look at value. There's a difference between value and cost. You know, do you pay for an SUV because you find value in it more than a baseline sedan? So you're paying more because you get the room, maybe you get the mileage, you get a higher seat, you get more safety features. So you're looking at total cost of ownership, not just at price. And unfortunately, in manufacturing, I think with suppliers, people keep looking at cost because they want to save the most money. And in the long term, that doesn't always save you the most money. It results in defects and rework and all the stuff from Lean Six Sigma that happens. Um, so I just wanted to add that. Any other questions, guys? No?
That was great, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know too much about too much. There's a lot rattling around in this head of mine. So thank you for coming today. I want to thank Rich and Matt so much. At the beginning, we had some technical difficulties and they were so patient and worked through them with me. Thank you for watching this presentation, and I hope you join us again next month. We do this every month. We publicize it on Eventbrite and on LinkedIn, and we'd love to have you register and come and bring your questions. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.